Hello, it's Ben with the DIY Homefront, and today I'm going to talk to you about some RIDGED Pro Gear Gen 2 tool cases. I put some foam inside of one, and I thought I'd set you see what it looks like.
Well, this DIY project also includes me making a new intro for the channel. So leave a comment and tell me what you think.
Hello, I'm the host of the DIY Homefront channel, and my name's Ben. I just wanted to welcome you aboard. Okay, here's my RIDGED Pro Gear System 2 case. And you can see inside it, I've got some Delta tools, and I've got a nice foam pad in there. I'm going to put some foam in another Delta case, and I'll show you how I do that, and that'll make sense how I got this one done. So I've got this old Delta case that my sander was in, and I'm going to turn this into a foam lined storage case. And the first thing I need to do is cut out all the plastic that's on the inside. I'm going to start by trying to get those gone.
I decided to go with my cordless grinder with this. It seems to do a really good job cutting through plastic, and the battery always seems to last a fairly long time as opposed to trying to cut metal with it. I've got a metal cutting wheel on it, and it does quick work of the plastic.
Now let's see if it'll work on this.
So that's where the owner's manual goes, and it was giving me a pretty hard time. So I went and got some tin snips to see if I couldn't help the process along a little.
See if these will get it.
And it helped get the pieces along the edge cut. The extra handle was getting in the way, so I decided to take that off, and that made it a little easier to get inside the case, but I still was having a hard time. So you can see I went back to using the tin snips because it seemed like I had an easier time getting them in the case and getting the plastic out. There were 4 tabs that held the sander in place, and you can see those come out fairly easy. You can even use the grinder to sort of smooth stuff over. Although you have to be careful because it's a plastic case and you don't want to cut through the case itself.
.60 grit sandpaper.
I took off the dust bag for the sander so that I could get the sander inside the case because there just wasn't that much room. So really the only reason why I'm sanding this case is because I'm just trying to make sure that when I put the foam in, it lays flush and goes all the way to the bottom.
So I went and got a rag out of the rag box. This is back to black. I'm just trying to clean it up a little bit.
Back to black is just another plastic cleaner meant for bumpers, but Armor All, Windex, you can use whatever to clean the case.
Alright, that takes care of the first part. It's all cleaned up on the inside. We just need to cut some foam to fill it in. I'm going to start by measuring. A little over 12. 7.5. Actually 8. 8 by 12. 8 by 12.25. I've cut all these edges, so I still only have one factory straight edge. 8 by 12. And this has a little bit of a curve to it. So I'm going to make this the bottom. Let's go up 8 inches. I know this is overkill, but it's the best one I got at the moment. I like to cut in such a way that I've got my knife blade in a groove. So I'm going to put, and I'm just going to cut along the line. It's always best to cut these just a little bit big because you want it snug inside of the case. You don't want it being loose flopping around. And there's 1/8. If you're a little sloppy, you can always go back and trim it up some. But most of the time, just being in the case is enough. So my 8 looks good. Measure twice, cut once. This is going to be 8 1/4. I'm going to go like 8 1/2. I mean 12 1/2. Yeah, 12 1/2. And this is my straight edge. It never got cut, so I want to keep that there. Not my other edge. You can see that's not very square. And that one's really in good shape. And there's 12 1/2. I should tell you too, if you're gonna mark on one side, I probably should have marked that on the back. You always want to try to keep your marks on the same side. That way you don't have any bleed over, but you can also do this. Just I can, as square as I can. I'm going to put my straightest edge along the back because I've got most of my cuts up front. So if I'm going to put cuts, I might as well put cuts on the front where my edge is ugly. And I am just going to eyeball this one. Should be the same on both sides, so I can flip this over. And I'm going to take less off than I need. I can take a little bit more off there. I think the front is all right. Now I can use this to make a slight indentation where that needs to get cut. Can you see that? We're just going to take a notch out, like just make an indent. And I am going to clean this. You can do this one of two ways, but I prefer to come at it. So we've got our notches. Let's try a Stanley knife and see if I can't. Not perfect. I'm going to take just a hint off there and just a hint. See, I just notched a little bit out. I think everything's pretty good, but still need some more off of that, don't I? Let's see if that fixes it. There's one side done. And I'm fine with that like that. I really am. Well, this is my shameless moment to ask you to like and subscribe and keep watching these videos. I'm going to eyeball this one. think that's my straightest edge. I'm gonna let that be the back.
I realized I should probably cut some off of the edge so it fits flush in the bottom, and the knife just did not work. So
This is gonna mimic that edge that rises up, that bevel. The top doesn't have it. Well, I guess the top does have it, doesn't it?
scissors are definitely the way to go when you need to trim stuff up, but they are messy, so make sure it's someplace you're not going to see it, usually the bottom. This is a much better camera angle of how I trimmed off the corners. So look straight down when you're doing this, so that way your line is where you want it. And then when you cut the line, make sure you cut the marker portion off so it's not visible once the foam is finally in place. I swapped out my Stanley knife blade because you're going to need a really sharp knife to make a good clean cut, especially on the top where it's going to be so visible. When it comes to trimming stuff off, use whatever works best. Scissors, knife, whatever works for you. Now the next part would be to make some notches for the front indentation that's by the latch. And I do the same as I've done before. You just put some marks on it, and then you look at the part you want to cut out, and you look at the foam, and you just go from there.
That's a hard one. It bevels in a pretty good bit at the bottom.
So I'm sort of going to make a triangle wedge this time. I will use the knife or the scissors, and if what I'm using doesn't work, I will swap to something else. It's been my experience with this particular type of foam that when you're right up against the edge, that a really sharp Stanley knife is the easiest thing to use to get a clean cut. I think it's because of the way the foam sort of pushes in as you're trying to cut it. It's easy to take a knife and cut a shape out of the inside of the foam, but it's really hard to use that knife along the very edge. The knife I've been using is actually one of those grocery store knives. It came from Sam's Club, and it's a serrated edge, and it's almost like a bread knife. I have found that you need something with a serrated edge if you're going to have any luck at all trying to cut this foam.
There we go. Got a pretty good bevel. I think that's going to be it. Take a little notch around all the edges.
All right, one recycled DeWALT case with foam on both sides, ready for use.
Let's get back to what I originally started with, which was my RIDGED case. You can see the tools in it, and now you can imagine how I got that piece cut. So there's the foam in the case, and this is another one I made. And I started by cutting it square, and then I would make notches where things would be, and I would test fit it, and eventually I ended up with a perfect fit, and it's notched out for the front. I ended up using my other RIDGED case for something else. I'm not sure what tools will go where eventually, but I don't use a jigsaw at the moment very often at all. And I don't think I want to hang it up or, keep it out, because you're just going to get covered in dust. But if it fits in this little DeWALT, that might be the perfect spot for it. Survey says it would be a tight fit. Definitely wouldn't get damaged in there, would it? But I don't know if that's it or not. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it in there, and I will think about it. Well, that's it for this. I've got a tool organizer that's being shipped, and when it gets here, I'll make a video of that. Until then, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.